Okay, good morning, class. Today we are going to look at Unit 3, that is about master plan. What is a master plan? What are the different criteria that we need to represent on a master plan? How do we represent a master plan, and what are the aspects that we shall cover in a master plan? So, when we start trying to understand about town planning or city planning, the first aspect that comes to us is a master plan. So master plan, as the word goes, is not a plan as such. It is a fully planned, laid down, proper laid down, criterias that is set for a particular period, for a particular city, and that shall be executed for over a number of years. So a master plan is a comprehensive, long term perspective plan which is intended for guiding the sustainable plan development of a city. So now here we should understand that it is basically a document. Okay, and what are the aspects of a master plan? It creates a vision. For example, when we talk about the vision, what we need to see the city of Chennai like in the next 25 years. So it is a vision that is supported by policies. Now there is a lot of policy making that goes into it, guidelines, priorities. It is a policy based document. It does not or it cannot regulate the land use. Okay, master plan lays down the planning. Okay, so for a second, just a second. Okay, so master plan cannot, it basically lays down the planning guidelines, policies, development code, okay, and it lays down the planning guidelines, policies. Just a second, trying to. Okay, Unit 3, Part 1. Yeah, so here you can say that the master plan lays down the planning guidelines, policies, development code, space requirements for various socio-economic activities supporting city population during a plan period. Now, this plan period is something that we will come a little later on. And now, where do we get the inputs? How do we get the data for putting down a master plan? It is based on public input, on surveys, planning initiatives, existing development, physical characteristics, and socio-economic conditions. And why do we need a master plan? The function of a master plan is to guide the development of a city in an orderly manner as to improve the quality of life of the people. Just a second. Okay. Okay, so here we are, and the idea of a master plan is to guide the development of a city in an orderly manner as to improve the quality of life of the people. That is the whole purpose of planning a town or planning a city. And the master plan is also in place to organize and coordinate the complex relationships between urban land uses. It is also for the need to chart a course for growth and change, be responsive to change, and maintain its validity over time and space, and be subject to continual review. Now, this is something very crucial. There is not a fixed policy that is in place. The policies are always subject to change and review. The master plan includes analysis, recommendations, and proposals for population, economy, housing, transportation, community facilities, land use, and it is the basis for all infrastructure requirements for a town or a city. Now, master plan also directs the physical development of the city in relation to its social and economic characteristics based on comprehensive surveys and studies on the present status and the future growth prospects. Master plan provides a resource mobilization plan for the proposed development work. From where does the funds come? From where does the manpower come, the personnel come, etc. Now, in this context, we will also, throw light on land use. Okay. Now, land use is actually, as we saw here, the master plan does not regulate land use. Okay, land use is something that is is laid down. Okay, now we know why what is the need for land use, what are the different types of land use, and those things are already there, but that doesn't come under the purview of the master plan. So now let us go a little more into the other aspects of master plan and come back to the land use. Okay, so we have the review of the first master plan for the city of Chennai. So let us understand master plan in a better way by having a look at or reviewing the master plan which was originally in place for the city of Chennai. Now, in the process of preparation of the second master plan, it is required to review the working of the first master plan. Currently, it is the second master plan, that is what we are referring to. Okay, so it would be easy to review the first master plan. What are the flaws? What are the good points? The advantages? The drawbacks, etc. And then let us draw a comparison here. The first master plan was notified in the Government Gazette on the 5th of August 1975, calling for objections and suggestions, and it was also approved in the year 1976. The first master plan had estimated that by 2001, the Chennai metropolitan area, earlier known that way, that is the CMA, would have a total population of 7.1 million, including the 4 million in the Chennai city. So if you now look at this is something very interesting. Okay, now the population, there were a lot of tools that were put in place to gather, by means of survey, the population, projected population for the city of Chennai, that is only in the Chennai metropolitan area. By 2001, the estimate was around 7.1 million, that is including the 4 million of the Chennai city also. Now, let us have a look at the strategies that were proposed in the first master plan for dispersal of the projected population and for the overall development of the CMA. The first the point that was really pushed forward was to relieve the congestion in the city through the development of radial corridors linked to 3 satellite towns and 6 urban nodes, and of course to also decentralize the economic and industrial activities into urban nodes and satellite towns. So this was the point that was literally put pressure on because of the very nasty traffic issues, travel issues in the city over a period of time. Then the strategy that was proposed was to orient the development projects towards raising the levels of income both at the state and the metropolitan level. That is to increase the level of income for entire Tamil Nadu and also for the CMA. There was another clause that was set up to take up large scale industrialization, strengthening of service and light industries with medium range employment, and increasing tertiary sector employment, and also to locate large scale industries in the hinterland of CMA to satisfy the employment needs of the resident population. So that was, there was a focus on that. Then to optimize the use of existing infrastructure facilities. Now, this is something that we see over a period of time. There were a lot of infrastructure facilities that is already planned, currently planned, and planned for the future, but some of them lose its importance and it just, becomes a state level or a national level waste that becomes a burden. So, there were calls to optimize the use of existing infrastructure facilities, which will actually help in planning the spatial aspects and also to plan their expansion to meet the future needs by regulating the land uses and building activities. To take up the following projects for immediate implementation. The first one that was the priority wise in the list, the roads. Construction of the missing links of the inner ring roads, IRR, and construction of intermediate ring roads and ORR, that is the outer ring roads. So the inner ring roads, intermediate ring roads, and the outer ring roads. There were a lot of emphasis given to these. Construction of 3 terminals for long distance buses and truck terminals on the radial corridors at their junction with the outer ring road. Construction of new Western Express Highway connecting Annanagar with Avadi. This is as far as the roads are concerned. Then comes the railways. Construction of the MRTS, Mass Rapid Transit System along the north-south eastern corridor, introduction of electrified suburban train system on Madras Tiruvallur and Madras Minjur lines, construction of a combined railway terminal, construction of a circular railway to decentralize the CBD by shifting the wholesale markets and transport terminals. Now, this is something worth pondering. When we initially try to set the CBD, the whole idea is to have everything focused at a central point of focus. So now the need to decentralize the CBD meant that the wholesale markets and the transport terminals had to be pushed away from the CBD to take up a massive housing program by acquiring at about say 12,000 hectares or say 120 square kilometers at urban nodes and satellite towns. Most of the new housing by public agencies to be provided in the urban nodes. To take up detailed studies and programs by meeting the future demand of water at 227 liters per uh, 227 LP CD to provide educational and health facilities at convenient locations to serve the different sections of the population, to allocate lands for various uses in proper locations as to promote orderliness and smooth functioning. So these were the strategies that were proposed in the first master plan. Okay, and this was mainly for dispersing the projected population and also for the overall development of the CMA. And now let us see, that was the proposal, the strategy proposals, and let us now have a look at the extent to which the objectives and strategies of the first master plan were achieved or realized, because we knew the focus was on dispersing the population and also for the overall development of the CMA by giving importance to the roads, the railways, the mass rapid transit systems, the decentralization of the CBD, to improve the the water quality and quantity, the education systems, facilities, etc. So let us first see what happened to demography, that is the population. The population projected for 2001 for the city and the CMA almost tallied with the actual as per the 2001 census. Now, this was a great achievement. Out of the three satellite towns and six urban nodes proposed, CMDA was involved fully in the development of Marimalai Nagar, New Town, Manali urban node. Though the population proposed for three satellite towns was 1 lakh each, the actual population that settled in these suburbs were 1.16 at Tiruvallur, 0.55 at Gumdipundi, and zero point 0.5 lakh at Marimalai Nagar. In respect of the urban node at Manali, 500 acres of land were acquired and developed as a residential township to accommodate a population of 70,000. So here if you are trying to look at the good and the bad, the good was that the population estimated was more or less at par with the census figures, and there were small variations in the population for the suburban nodes which were taken care of. Industries. A number of medium and small scale industrial developments have come up in the area zoned for industrial development at Madavaram, Vyasarpadi, Kodungayur, Ambattur, Numbal, Pammal, and Perungudi. Industrial estates at Villivakam, Tirumalisai, and an exclusive one for women entrepreneurs near Avadi have been also developed. Income studies have shown that the contribution of the tertiary sector has steadily increased. So, as far as the industries that were laid down as a strategy in the first master plan, that worked really well. Now coming to the traffic and the transportation. As regards traffic and transportation projects, MRTs has been completed from Chennai Beach up to Velachery, stretch between Tiruvanmayur and Velachery also, were put into operation. So the first master plan estimated that the MRTs would considerably ease the congestion in the city, but the actuals were really not up to what the expectations were. Poor accessibility, inadequate intermodal transfer facilities, the non-achievability of the last mile, achieving the last mile, lack of coordination among different agencies, and delay in providing the link to St. Thomas Mount were some of the issues that had to be addressed. The Velachery St. Thomas Mount link was thereafter taken up. Electrification and optimization of suburban transport system in the western and northern corridors were completed. So, I think around 80% of the actual strategy that was put down in the FMP were actually realized. Level crossings at Tambaram, Sanatorium, Crompet, Pallavaram, St. Thomas Mount, Saidapet, Nelson Manikam Road, Harrington Road, etc., were replaced by underpasses or overpasses, with CMDA playing a very, responsible and role coordinating all the agencies. And when it comes to the roads, we know that a number of major roads such as Anna Salai, Periyar, EVR Salai, Voltax Road, they were widened as proposed. The inner ring roads were completed. The intermediate ring roads were formed. The one which did not work out was the one between NH4 and NH5. The outer ring roads were delayed because of land acquisition challenges, and so on. But again, to sum up, to an extent, all the proposed developmental strategies were realized. Decongestion. As part of decongestion measures, the wholesale markets for perishables, that is, flowers, fruits, and vegetables, were shifted to Coimbatore at the periphery of the city. Though the iron and steel market has been developed at Satangadu, the activity only could be partially shifted because of the unwillingness of the traders and other related issues. The Chennai Mufussil bus terminus, that the CMBT, was developed along the inner ring road at Coimbatore, and the bus terminals from CM the CBD, were shifted. So the truck terminal at Madhavaram was completed. The terminals along GST and the GWT, that is the Grand South Trunk Road and the Grand West Trunk Road, were not taken up due to the inadequate land and the problems associated with the airport vicinity rules and protocols. So that was pretty much about the decongestion. Now coming to the housing, 10 that is coming to the housing, the Tamilnad Housing Board was, actually played a very crucial role in developing housing for about 52,000 families, and other public agencies have contributed about 25,000 housing units. The Tamil Nadu State, that is the TNSCB, constructed nearly 65,000 tenements in Chennai. The private sector also played a major role in respect of the higher income groups and the medium income groups housing. So the 2001 census also very clearly showed that there is no significant gap between number of households and the housing units. Okay. The government efforts since 1971 to improve slums and provide them with better housing reduced drastically. That actually, to the advantage, resulted in reducing the number of slums in the city. Several projects such as the MUDP 1, MUDP 2, TNUDP, etc., were executed during the period to elevate the problems of the slum dwellers. So that is pretty much about the housing and the slum quality of the slum dwellers. Water supply and sewerage. After the creation of the CMWSSB, that is the Chennai Metro Water Sewerage Board, a number of comprehensive studies to improve water supply and sewerage system were taken up and their recommendations implemented, including the augmentation of sources and improving efficiency in supply in Chennai city. Supply of 227 LPCD still remains a distant dream, which were actually one of the major, strategy proposals in the first master plan. First master plan anticipated the capacity of sewerage treatment units as 1,177.5 MLD by 2001. However, the actual available capacity by that period was only 481. During the second master plan, the capacity of sewage treatment was, taken care of to meet the future demand. Education and health. Remarkable achievements were made in this sector because of the government's sustained action and considerable private initiative within the metropolitan area. Recreation spaces. The existing parks belonging to Chennai Corporation within the city were improved. New spaces for parks were created, though they were smaller in size. When planning permissions for multi-story buildings and special buildings from large extents of lands were issued. In the case of layout developments, including the Tamil Nadu Housing Board developments, larger spaces were created and local bodies have taken them over under the DCR, that is the Development Control Regulations. A number of stadia or the stadium were renovated or newly constructed, and the Sports Development Authority of Tamil Nadu took care of the need for specialized and higher orders sports requirements. Land use zoning. So as discussed in the previous presentation, the land use zoning is something that had to be literally given focus for, because the developments occurred as per the master plan, okay, except for a few variations by way of commercial and institutional activities in residential, agricultural, and the coming up of unapproved layouts in agriculture area. The CMDA periodically reviewed the land use zoning part of the plan. When a large number of requests were received in a particular area, comprehensive reclassifications were made not only for the residential activities but also for industrial, such as zoning of about 300 meter on either side of the Punamali bypass road, Rajiv Gandhi Salai, etc. Developments in the Chennai Metropolitan Authority. However, in the last 20 years or so, there have been a number of unauthorized, deviated developments taking advantage of the loopholes in the Tamilnadu Town and Country Planning Act of 1971 and the Local Bodies Acts and the poor enforcement of the same. The regularization schemes announced between 1999 and 2002 have not yielded the desired results even then. Okay, so as far as the Chennai city area is concerned, detailed development plan for 56 planning units have been prepared, covering about 60% of the area, and the remaining area could not be covered for various reasons, including the non availability of micro level data, subdivision level land data, ongoing resurveys by the revenue department, etc. So, if we have to really conclude and summarize the first master plan, okay, let us try to put it this way. The success of any plan depends on several factors: clear enunciation of objectives, setting of realistic physical targets, allocation of adequate physical, financial, and other resources, commitment of implementing departments and agencies, investment climate, private initiatives and involvement, participation of the stakeholders at every stage of planning and implementation, political will and public cooperation, etc. Despite several constraints, many of the objectives of the first master plan were achieved or realized. But even then, these are the loopholes that were really looming around, that is to take care of all the the aspects regarding the laying down of the objectives, the physical targets, allocating adequate financials, resources, teams, the commitment from the agencies, etc. So that is about the first master plan. That was actually, we try to review what was the first master plan about. We try to understand what happened during the implementation of the first master plan, and we also try to summarize what actually happened. So that was pretty much about the first master plan. Now, if I have to take you through the the next option, that is how the the monitoring and the implementation of the master plan actually happens. Okay, after that we are going to go and have a look at the land use planning, what are the various types of land use, etc. So, monitoring and implementing the master plan. Now, in the earlier presentation, we saw how the strategies were laid out. Okay, the objectives were laid out, the agencies were identified. Okay, the timeline was identified. Now, this is just the 10% of the entire master plan jobs that were assigned. The next step would be to monitor and implement the master plan. So achieving the outcomes. Now we know that the outcomes has to be laid out first. How do we achieve the outcomes? Okay. The Chennai master plan has a clear vision to achieve through its interventions. Okay. Through its interventions in the second master plan. Okay. So whatever stood as a unachieved objective or challenges that literally didn't materialize, the second master plan had a very clear objective or a vision to make sure that all the objectives were achieved. The objective is to make Chennai more livable, sustainable, economically vibrant, and to equip it with better assets to make it a prime metropolis in which all sections of people will prosper. In this effort, CMDA has to work with a wide range and large number of stakeholders in the government, private, non-governmental sectors, and with different sections of citizens and groups. The master plan therefore lay down policies and strategies and action plans for implementation by various stakeholders. A very important role of CMDA is to evaluate on a regular basis the progress made towards achieving the vision, the objectives, and the program as to effect appropriate and timely corrections during the period of the master plan. For this purpose, it needs to identify measurable indicators in the several sections to monitor the progress made by the stakeholders individually as well as collectively. Yes. So as long as there are no tangible criterias, it's very difficult to analyze and conclude as to how many of the objectives were achieved, to what extent the objectives were achieved. So now let us take a look at the livability parameters, because since that we understand was the one of the major vision and objective, that is to make Chennai more livable, sustainable. Okay, so the livability parameters, the levels of improvement in urban quality as reflected through the comparison of or let us say index of poverty, unemployment, reduction of slums, and provision of affordable housing, and prevention and remediation of environmental pollution and damage, strengthening of sources and infrastructure would be the visible signs which portray how the city is moving towards this vision. So as far as the livability parameter indexes were concerned, it was basically about poverty, unemployment, reduction of slums, provision of affordable housing, prevention and remediation of environmental pollution, strengthening of resources and infrastructure, etc. And then comes the use of the urban indicators. The use of urban indicators worldwide has become widespread based on the successful outcome of the recommendations. Okay, many cities have established a system of indicators for assessing the quality of life, as also levels of sustainability achieved in the city and comparing it with other cities. So these indicators actually laid the paved the way for uh, understanding the livability, or so these basically became the indexes: livability, sustainability, the transport quality, etc., smartness of the city. Then then there was this need to understand the development of indicators for Chennai. So there was a clear cut vision to develop indicators, because the system was already in place, and from taking cue from other cities and other city planning and city what to say, like the systems. Okay, so the models, in fact the model would be the right word. So taking cue from other city models, the CMDA understood the need to develop indicators for Chennai. So this plan proposes to evolve its own set of indicators and facilitate these stakeholders to assemble the required information on a regular basis and make it available to all. So, the first one in this direction was to raise public awareness in city improvements and to measure the progress made. The indicators are proposed to be established in 13 sectors as worked out by the Asian Development Bank, which actually works as an urban indicator for managing the cities. Okay, and these indicators, which have been worked out with wide consultations among various cities, would provide a basic framework for measuring the progress for our city also. And here I have listed down the indicators for Chennai city, which were which were actually clustered under the following headings: population, migration, urbanization. Then comes the income disparities, unemployment, and poverty. health and education, urban productivity and competitiveness, technology and connectivity, urban land, housing, municipal services, urban environment, urban transport, culture, local government finance and investments, urban governance. Now, what were the mechanisms that were identified to come up with identifying the indicators? The specific indicators under each sector would be identified by the monitoring committees proposed under the master plan in consultation with the parastatal organizations and departments of government, particularly the Metro Water, the Housing and Slum Clearance Board, Industrial and Labor Department, local bodies, private sector actors, the NGOs, including industrialists and real estate promoters and builders and other civil society and citizen stakeholders. Then comes the study part. The studies made earlier and the proceedings of the consultations and the deliberations of the committees set up to examine the objections and suggestions made by the public have broadened the perceptions of problems and approaches needed to tackle them. CMDA, through the monitoring and review committees, proposed uh, decided that they would initiate fine tuning of the policies and strategies included in the master plan for effective implementation of the master plan. The monitoring committees also were to identify areas of further studies in the various sectors which would need to strengthen benchmarking as well as providing the necessary data for assessing the progress made. Some of the studies that will be initiated or facilitated by CMDA were already indicated in the relevant. So, a few more studies in areas where information is lacking or inadequate may be necessary to strengthen the policy formulation. In this effort, the combined energies of Department of Government as well as academics and reputed research institutions in Chennai were proposed to be fully mobilized. So there were a list that was drawn up as to what should be the studies that should be undertaken to to end up in a successful policy formulation. So the first one being the future investments in CMA. CMDA had earlier prepared a CMDP, that is the development plan for infrastructure improvements within CMA at an estimated cost of to the tune of rupees 18,000 crores. It is being implemented as annual plans prepared every year in consultation with the agencies, department concerned, making annual budgetary allocations under the concerned department, agencies, etc. In the last 4 years, that is past 2003, an amount of rupees 3,745 crores were invested in infrastructure improvement in the sectors of transport, housing, municipal services, water supply, sewerage, drainage, etc. In the development plan for CMA prepared for financial assistance under JNNURM, that is the Jawaharlal Nehru Urban uh, Rejuvenation infrastructure improvements to the tune of 44,780 crores were proposed for implementation over a period of 7 years. The projects are implemented by accessing funds under the JNNURM and others sourced by the departments or agencies concerned. So now here, this is the list of monitoring and the review committees, which is in a tabular column over here to make it easy for you to understand. So here, what we are gonna look at: the committee, Economic and Employment Committee, would actually the state urban development policy, they would review this, they would review the demography, they would review the economy, employment and skill training. Land use and environment committee would review the land use zoning, development regulations, urban design, urban renewal, heritage building conservations, recreation, environment, greening, disaster mitigation and management. Traffic and transport committee, traffic transportation committee would review the traffic transportation, including road, rail, paratransit, etc. Shelter and infrastructure committee would take care of the housing for all categories, water supply, sanitation, drainage, solid and liquid waste, health, electricity, communication, education, and other social infrastructure. Investment planning and governance committee would review the investment planning, governance, and the global index um, of the investment and other related criteria. And these were the list of studies: income and employment in formal and informal jobs, that is basically the income distribution; land needs for informal and small scale enterprise; rate of urban growth; primary healthcare and incidence of diseases; school enrollment and vocational training needs; land availability for affordable housing; slum growth, slum resettlement; quantity and quality of protected water supply; practical ways of augmenting water resources; levels and impact of households' sewage disposal methods; generation of solid waste and quantity treated; study on hazardous and e-waste management; water quality in rivers, Kuvam, Adair, Buckingham Canal, etc., and the Temple tanks; air quality monitoring study; model split and travel time study; maximizing walk and cycle facility; citizen participation opportunities and level in urban bodies, etc., etc., etc. So this is how the monitoring and the implementation of the master plan were chalked out. Okay, so now we will also take a look at the land use zones. What is land use planning, so as to understand how this could be effectively brought into, it linked with the master plan. And even though the master plan doesn't actually formulate rules and regulations for land use criteria, but the land use and planning strategy uh, were done parallelly, and the info was passed on to the master plan team as to come up with the best strategy formulation. So now let us look at the land use and the planning strategy. With the increase and concentration of population in urban area, urban problems increased. It required and continued to require restriction in respect of the use and occupation of land in urban area. So basically, land use is the is what the land is basically put to use. For example, a residential area, a commercial area, institution area, etc. So, in order to regulate the growth of the metropolitan area in an orderly manner and to ensure its economic viability, social stability, and sound management for the present and the foreseeable future, the master plan with zoning and development regulation is necessary. So, the idea of zoning is that the segregation of certain uses from others reduce the effect of negative externalities which some uses have on others. Zoning provides spatial segregation of conflicting uses. Yeah, this is something that is very important. It also has the benefit of increasing positive externalities because many users find an advantage in being grouped with other similar users. These external effects include air and water pollution, excessive noise level, traffic congestion, aesthetic disamenities, etc. Because of this predominant role, modern zoning encompasses expanded objectives for supplying certain public goods such as preservation of open space, prime agricultural land, and ecologically sensitive areas also. Zoning is also desired on reduction of costs of providing certain public services. Now, land use regulations were actually laid down very clearly in the Chennai Metropolitan Authority prior to 1975, which was actually not significant. Only about 20% of the Chennai city area, less than 1% of the remaining Chennai Metropolitan Authority area, which was outside the Chennai city, were actually formatted and taken care of. So um, later there was the land subdivision regulations prior to 1975, before the first master plan. They were very had a lot of limitations to the control of making public and private streets under the local body act. They were not framed either to discourage such developments in such area which is not suitable, or uh, did not actually provide the necessary standards. So the land use regulation for the first master plan from 1975, it came into force, okay, on it came into force in August 1975, and it was approved by the government by virtue of the government orders to actually come up with a detailed land use plan, okay. And this was under the it was enforced through a set of regulations under development control rules, which is known as the DCR, and that actually formed a part of the master plan. So the breakup of the then existed land use is actually featured below. Residential land use in Chennai city to the tune of 44%. Rest of the Chennai Metropolitan Authority area 8%. Commercial 4.7 and 0.06. Industrial 5%, 2%, 17% for institutional, 2% in the CMA. Open space, if you see, it is almost tallying 5% and 4.5. Agriculture, as you see in the Chennai city, there was no land use segregation for agriculture. In the rest of CMA, you can see that the percentage of almost 70 percentage of land set apart for agriculture. So that is the whole takeaway from this tabular column. Now, the land use zoning classification as for the first master plan are the primary residential use zone, mixed residential use zone, commercial use zone, light industrial use zone, general industries use zone, special and hazardous industrial use zone, institutional use zone, open space and recreational use zone, agriculture use zone, and non-urban use zone. So this is how the breakup of the land use activities were actually laid down. And as per the first master plan, there were a lot of revamping, and you can see that in the Chennai city, suburbs, and the CMA, the residential land use, right from 44, it actually went up to 61, and in CMA from 8%, it went up to 22.27. Mixed residential is where there were residential and institutional or light industrial or commercial activities were encouraged. That actually, in the CMA went up to 8%. And agriculture, if you see, was reduced from 70% to 36%. Non-urban also was reduced, and here you can see that still in CMA, the highest percentage was for the agricultural land use, and in the Chennai city you can see that it is for the primary residential land use. So with this, we just will come to the end of this lecture session. In the next class, we are going to look at how the various land uses were actually documented, and how the classifications how the reclassification was done, etc. And then we will also have a look at the land use map for Chennai city. Okay, so that is how we are gonna wind up today's class and start with the next lecture. Thank you all.